Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review. So, if you were a child of the 80s, two of the greatest cartoon villains of all time were Megatron and Skeletor. Skeletor came from the Masters of the Universe, and Megatron was from the Transformers. In this day and age, it is very common for companies to collab together and bring us some really cool action figures. Alright, so with a partnership from Mattel and Hasbro, they are bringing us this. We have Skeletor, but decked out in Megatron armor. And this thing looks amazing. So, sit back, relax, and all hail Megatron. Alright, it's time to get up close and personal with Skeletor in his Megatron armor. The evil Decepticon Lord of Destruction. Alright, so if you asked me a few years ago if a collab between Hasbro and Mattel was possible, I'd probably tell you no. Hasbro and Mattel are the two biggest heavy hitters in the toy world, especially when it comes to like toys aimed at boys. You know, and they both have stuff that really comes to mind. Like, you know, for Hasbro, they produce Star Wars, they produce Transformers, G.I. Joe, and whatnot. Mattel, you know, they have Barbie, they have Masters of the Universe, Hot Wheels, you know. So if you asked me way back when if they'd ever work together and put together Masters of the Universe with Transformers, I'd be like, you're nuts. Alright, so when they first announced these figures a few years ago, I remember the fan response was very kind of mixed. And I'm for whatever reason, I always fall into the camp of unpopular opinion. I thought they looked great. You know, I was excited for these. The only thing that kept me from buying them right out of the gate was that they were expensive. These figures, I think they originally retailed for maybe $30, which was nuts, if not more. And I think what you're clearly paying for is that, you know, for one, you're getting a lot of accessories, but everything about these figures felt elevated. They were deluxe figures. They came in these boxes. The graphic design work is amazing. But you're really paying for the fact that you're paying for the license. You're paying for both Masters of the Universe and Transformers. You know, both companies, they're getting, you know, their pockets filled with your money because, you know, there's two properties involved in this. And I was on board. And I'll admit it, I didn't buy these figures right away. I just kind of played the long game and waited till they're on clearance. So it's like, as much as I was stoked on these, it's like I was just gonna just hold off because I knew at some point in time my Target would have these clearance for pretty cheap, and they did. And once they did, I started buying them. So what we have here is Megatron and Skeletor. If you're a child during the 80s, two of the most defining and iconic cartoon villains were Cobra Commander. I take it back, there were three. Cobra Commander, Skeletor, and Megatron. And combining Megatron with Skeletor, it doesn't seem like a match made in heaven, but it seemed like something that someone thought of, and for whatever reason, in my opinion, I think it kind of works. You know, they're both crazy. They're both I think Megatron, if you've read the comic books, especially the IDW ones, Megatron, he's a little bit more grounded. He's kind of like the Marvel character Magneto, where, you know, his past is very, you know, he was definitely an evil character at a certain point, but then he had a moment where he changed, and Megatron's much like that. You know, he's much like the modern day Magneto, where he's a little bit more grounded, a little bit more, I don't know, he has honorable qualities. Skeletor, on the other hand, I don't think he has any honorable qualities whatsoever, and we see that reflected time and time again in the different fictions. So for me, you know, he's definitely one of the iconic villain characters that we saw growing up in the 80s. You know, every afternoon after school, you'd plop yourself on your couch and watch He-Man or watch Transformers. So this merging these two characters together just seems kind of like, for me, a dream come true. I love the graphic design work on the box. It's kind of cool how it kind of has the grid lines. It's very synth, very 80s. But at the same time, if you're a Transformers fan, this is kind of very reminiscent of when Megatron and some of the Decepticons are reformatted by Unicron, you know, and they become different characters. If you've seen Transformers the movie, there's a scene where Megatron, he's near death, and Unicron gets him, and then he reformats him into Galvatron. And I think that's kind of cool. You know, despite the fact this is very 80s with the grids, and it feels very synthwave, it also echoes that Transformers thing where here's Megatron being reformatted into, or here's Skeletor being reformatted into Megatron. And I think that's pretty cool. We have, you know, the explosion going on the back, like the old Masters logo. We have Skeletor in his Megatron armor. And on the back, gorgeous, gorgeous illustration. Infused with the strength and raw power of Megatron, leader of the Decepticons, the new armor donned by Skeletor is unyielding enough to harness both the power of Grayskull and all the Energon in the universe. And if you're unfamiliar with Energon, that's what fuels the Transformers. And here are the accessories. You can replace the cannon barrel to change it into the Havoc Staff, which is Skeletor's trademark weapon. And you can swap the Energon mace onto his wrist, much like we saw Megatron do in the 80s cartoon. All right, so this is a figure that I do not want to destroy the packaging. I like the packaging a lot. I want to keep this in good shape. So I'm going to attempt to like not mess it up as I open this up. And hopefully it just has the one piece of tape. I don't know how to open this. You don't open it from the bottom. You don't open it from the top. You open it from the sides. But it's like I think one of those weird tri-tab kind of deals where all the tabs kind of interlock with each other to create the side. And I don't want to mess this up because it's a nice package. Give me a moment while I try to figure out how to do this. And that's up. I know. Just give me a moment. There you go. Oh, all right. So I opened up the correct side, unless this is on the other side as well. So when you open this up, you get the Megatron or Megatron armor tech specs. This is very reminiscent of the 80s Transformers. If you grew up on G1 Transformers, you'll remember that on the box in the back. Toward the bottom, they had the bio cards. And not only would you get the bio with a character portrait, but also give you the stats. So for Skeletor and Megatron armor, his strength is an 8, speed is a 5, endurance 8, courage 7, power 10, skill 9. I think this is kind of fair. If anything, I'd say the courage should be higher. Just because Skeletor could sometimes be known to be somewhat a little bit cowardly, but Megatron is not. So I kind of feel like the courage should be a lot higher than what it's given. Alright, we have the comic book, which is taped onto the card. I'm not going to remove this. I don't want to F up the card. But the cover art looks pretty sick. And then we have Megatron, or we have Skeletor dressed up as Megatron. Alright, so you have a couple of accessories here. You have this kind of like Energon blade or whatever it is with a kind of like a ram's head. You have his mace, which I think the instruction says you could detach, I think this piece or something, and what was it? You could attach it to his arm. Where's the instructions? Yeah, so you could detach this from the handle and plug it into his forearm. This doesn't seem like it wants to come off all that easily. I don't want to force it. And then here we have the meat and potatoes of Skeletor's armory or weapons. We have the Havoc staff, but it's kind of redesigned and repurposed as Megatron's fusion cannon, which is awesome. Weird trivia bit about me. So I'm a big or I used to be a huge comic book reader, especially when it came to Transformers. And then when IDW was publishing the Transformers book, I was really into collecting original artwork. And I actually have the original artwork of the page from the comic books when Megatron gets his fusion cannon. And it's one of those things that, if I don't know, maybe one day I'll do a video about it, but it's pretty cool. It's kind of like the origin of Megatron's big-ass gun. Here's the figure. It's wacky, it's wonky, and I'm on board with it. I think the line's pretty much one and done. I think they're done with it. I think the last remaining figures were, there was the Bumblebee, that which is Man-at-Arms, and then there was the there was a Starscream figure, wasn't there? I can't remember which character, though. But here we have Megatron, and it looks cool. I mean, or it's Skeletor with Megatron armor. So in terms of the height and proportions, it's very, very much a Masters of the Universe figure. You know, here is Origins He-Man. You can see it. The armor plating doesn't come off. You know, this is the body of the figure. So it's very boxy, much like Megatron. He still has the loincloth, but it's slightly redesigned. You'll notice there's some sockets on the back, so you can like store his weapons. For example, there's this thing here. You know, if you want to plug that in. This is cool. These shoulder armor pieces, they're on hinges, which is a nice detail. And that's brilliant because it allows the arms to go outward. That's cool. Arms swivel, they bend. This is a tight joint. I'm not going to mess around with it. I'm being a little bit more cautious with this figure because I don't want to break it. I bought a 2000 X Skeletor figure, and when I pulled it out of the tray, I broke the arm at the elbow, and that pissed me off. So I don't want to do that here. The fusion cannon, you can mount it. It's pretty cool because on his forearm, if you look, there's all these fins, and you can actually mount the forearm here on in any which direction. If you want to mount it on the side, you can mount the fusion cannon on the side. If you want to mount it on top, you can mount it on top. So it's kind of cool to give you those options. Much like the instruction says, you got take this apart and then you know, make it the Havoc staff, you know, so you can wield it, and then this thing rotates around. That's cool. Since we're on the subject of Megatron, leader of the Decepticons, and one of my favorite comic book, cartoon, toy figures ever, we have different versions of Megatron. So this kind of embodies what Megatron looks like in the G1 80s cartoon. This was a vinyl figure that came out years ago, maybe 13 years ago. Originally, I think it was part of a box set that was a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. But later on, it was sold individually, mass retail. You can find these maybe like at dollar stores. And then I got this one at Walmart years ago during the holiday season. And you can see it really retains Megatron's key features like the helmet, the chest design. So these two could be buddies and hang out. And then here we have it's not the OG Megatron. It was a reissued. This one came out around the time of, I think, Transformers Dark of the Moon. This was a Takara Tomy Japanese reissued figure. I think this came with everything the original Megatron came with, minus the longer barrel and what's it called, the stock that attaches to the back. The finish isn't as nice as the original figure. You know, this is just a plain gray plastic as opposed to that chrome look. But this is pretty much, you know, what the original G1 figure kind of looked like. And then here's his fusion cannon, you know. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I think we're very blessed in this day and age. If you're a toy collector, if you think about it in life, you know, collecting toys is a luxury. It's a first world luxury. You know, there's third world countries where people are just trying to get by on like just getting food and water. And I'm very fortunate. If you're watching this video, you might be fortunate enough too, where you know you could buy toys. And it's crazy to think that in this day and age, you know, that someone thought up the idea of, hey, let's combine He-Man or Master of the Universe with Transformers and give us, you know, these collab figures. Again, these figures were very expensive when they first came out, you know, but I'm glad they did them. I think they look cool, and it's a very unique thing to have, you know. And being a fan of both properties, I'm just stoked, you know. Not that I ever dreamt of Megatron and Skeletor ever like amalgamating and becoming one character, but it's such a neat concept. And we see that all the time, you know, especially with like TMNT, you know, the Turtles, they whore themselves out everywhere. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we've seen them in like so many different crossovers with like G.I. Joe and like Street Fighter and Masters of the Universe. So it's cool that Transformers, you know, they get to play that game too and get to be friendly with the Masters of the Universe. All right, so with that being said, let's wrap this one up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, subscriber, thank you so much for continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. All right, later.